Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over that chilly and active pattern which is going to be taking place over much of the northern United States over the next couple of weeks. It looks like we could go into a bit of a milder spell in the next week or two, but then after that it should go into a bit of a colder period, mainly because we're going to be cycling out some of that warm air, and some of the colder air which is up in Canada will probably make a return back to the United States. So we will see a little bit of a break over the next couple of weeks or week or two in terms of seeing some warmer air, but then after that it should be rather chilly. We will also have a active pattern throughout, so we will have an abundance of storms moving across the central and eastern United States and also for the northwest over the next couple of weeks. So overall it's going to be an interesting pattern to track, and we're going to keep you updated right here. So let's start off with our weather photo of the day. This one is sent in by Braden from Detroit, and he also has a weather channel on YouTube, which you can search up right there, Phantom Weather Channel. He does great work over there, and I would definitely recommend that you go check him out. But this one was taken from around Detroit, Michigan over the weekend. The one on the left was taken on Saturday evening, and then the picture on the right was taken on Sunday morning, I believe. You do see that some of that was sticking and still falling on the left hand side picture. So this one that was taken in the night was still seeing some accumulation happening. You can see it kind of being picked out, almost looks like rain because the camera isn't picking it up well, but this is not the final accumulation right here on the left hand side. On the right hand side, this is what it looks like in the morning, so you get a little bit of a better idea of what's going on and how much actually accumulated. There is a good, I would say, probably closer to 2 or 3 inches of snowfall on that area. I could even make a case for 4, but again, I don't know the exact measurement off of this. Some of the reports around that area were of about 1 to 4 inches of snowfall, so a decent guess would be, again, maybe 2 or 3 inches of snow out of this. It was sticking fairly good, especially to those metal surfaces, which means that, again, it was a colder oriented storm compared to the ones that we've seen before this one, where it was more of just a rain event, or maybe you saw a little bit of snow but it wasn't sticking. The intensity mixed with the cold air which was already in place really led to a decent storm forming up. So if you have any photos that you guys want to send in, send them over to my email address, which is elitheweatherguyyt@gmail.com. Preferably if they could be horizontal pictures like these ones that Braden sent in, just because it fits in on the screen a little bit better than the vertical pictures, and also just write a general area from where you took that photo from. So like Braden did, you could just write Detroit, Michigan. You could have just wrote in southeastern Michigan or southern Michigan if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but just a general location so that we can get an idea of where that photo was taken from. Here's a look at the National Weather Service page from today. You can see that we do have some high wind warnings up for parts of Montana and Wyoming. We have some wind advisories up for parts of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, New York, Maryland, West Virginia, and Virginia. And other than that, we really don't have many other washes or warnings currently, and up in these areas, there's really not a lot going on today in terms of actual weather and storms, but in terms of the pattern, things are definitely starting to heat up. So even though you might not be seeing it physically with any rain or snow, there are still a lot of things that are moving around, and it is setting up an interesting week as we go into this upcoming week. The high temperature yesterday was 91 degrees in Modesto City, California. Also in Palm Springs, California, they got up to 91 degrees. The low temperature was -1 at Mount Washington, New Hampshire. The highest rainfall report was in Hem Creek, Idaho, where they got 1.25 inches of rain, and the highest snowfall report was 1 mile east-northeast of Mountain, Wisconsin, where they got 7 inches of snowfall. Here's a look at the NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, just to give you an update from this. Here's a look at what the European model is expecting with this, and you can see that we were in a negative phase for a decent while, and if you remember, that correlates fairly nicely with a colder period of time at least for the eastern United States. Over the time where the NAO was negative, that's when the snow occurred in the Great Lakes and the interior Northeast. So that's really a sign of a colder pattern. So you would want this to be in a negative phase if you are in the eastern United States. And right now it's going into a positive phase. So that would be the opposite of what would be favorable for cold and snow. But after this little time period between about now and I'd say the 7th or the 8th of December, it does dive back down to below that zero line and then kind of hovers around zero, but still on the negative side of things. So that is definitely a promising sign when you're looking at this and you're thinking about whether or not this is going to be an interesting or cold late December, especially as we get closer to the holiday season. It looks like after the 15th or at the latest, probably the 20th. Again, that would be the worst case scenario or the best case scenario, depending on how you look at it. But really, between about the 10th and the 20th is going to be your window for this pattern to change and shake up. At least from now until the 10th, and maybe even beyond that, it is going to be a bit warmer because all these oscillations, teleconnections, all of that are all pointing towards a warmer next 7 to 10 days. After that, it does start to cool down. Here's the Arctic oscillation, and this covers, again, the Arctic Circle. It has been negative over the past couple of weeks, but recently it has went back up above that positive line, and now it is going to be going maybe 1 to 3 standard deviations above the mean, which is fairly decent and fairly high. Again, you would want this one to be on the negative side as well if you like cold and snow in the east, and we're seeing the opposite of that right now, and that is correlating with some warmer temperatures in the east. So today was a fairly mild one for many in the east, and you can see that correlating fairly nicely with these teleconnections. You can go back and you can see when it was colder in the east and the central United States, and that matches quite nicely where it was in that negative phase. And you can see that at the end of this time frame, it is going close to the zero line, almost approaches it, and then it kind of rebounds a little bit more and then comes back up, but still it's right within 1 standard deviation of the mean. So that's a fairly decent enough sign, maybe still a bit on the warmer side, or maybe not as favorable of a teleconnection sign, but this is only going through about the 12th, so we would still need to see what would happen after that between about the 13th through the 20th. That would be really the determiner into whether this is going to be a bit of a colder pattern or if we're just going to stagnate into a warmer and milder weather pattern. Here would be the PNA, which is the Pacific North America Index. You can see that this one is going sharply negative. So after being in that positive phase for quite a while, when again it was cold in the east and warm out in the west, now we're seeing the opposite. So a negative PNA would indicate cold in the west, warm in the east, and we're seeing that occur, but we really don't see any trend. Unlike with the NAO, we don't see any trend of this one coming closer to that zero line. So this is where the issues start to come up with, is this actually going to go back into a colder pattern in the near future, or are we going to have to wait off maybe another 3 or 4 weeks before that occurs? I'm still hedging my bets. I think it's probably still going to switch around before the 20th, but again, this is something that we've been seeing recently where we've had this trend of seeing some warmer temperatures being forecasted a little bit later on in the long range. Here is the northern hemisphere view of what's going on in the upper air. We're looking at a very high up view, so we're actually a few thousand feet up in the atmosphere, taking a look at what's occurring. So this is not going to show you individual storms like we would normally see on some of these maps, but it will show you the main features. So we have a ridge of, or a dome of high pressure or warmer conditions over Canada and the United States. We have our polar vortex, or our cold air, up here into the Arctic Circle, and you're going to see how this moves around. Now, this is for about tomorrow. This system right here is going to dive into the west, and as it does so, it's eventually going to migrate into the east. So over the next 10 days, it's going to end up, by the end of this cycle, the end of this model run, it'll end up somewhere in the northwest, and then After that, between the 10 and 15-day range, we would have to just kind of assume what would happen because we don't have any model guidance on it, but we can assume that that would eventually make a full spin around, and that would explain why the PNA is remaining negative, because if this cold air is diving into the eastern Pacific where the PNA covers, well, of course, it's going to be in a negative phase, but that could also signal that we would be going into a sharply positive PNA right after that, as that little ball of cold air would make its move further to the east. So that is a promising sign, and definitely something that you want to keep an eye on over the next couple of weeks. So here's Friday, here's Saturday, here's that system diving further to the south. So now it's into central Canada. We're going to see the first wave of this move through into eastern Canada by Monday. That continues to move into the eastern United States and eastern Canada. Here's the next system. This is the one that's going to move into the northwest and then eventually wrap around. So by this point, it's looking like a fairly decent signature for the east. We're looking at a decent pattern shaping up, if you like, cold and snow, and then that cold air moves out. So now what we're going to see is bridging replace that up into the central and eastern part of North America. And on the western end of this whole pattern, we're going to see some cold air dive in from Russia and Alaska and make its way further to the south into western Canada and the western US. So if we move this on, actually, this is actually the last frame of the model, but this system would make its way further to the south, eventually into the western United States. And then what the real question is does this continue its path to the east? Because we see a lot of these storms come in from the Arctic Circle, and then some point, either in Canada or in the United States, they make that curve to the east because they get picked up by the trade winds, which over this latitude go from west to east. But you can actually go up, in latitude, and you would actually get trade winds that come in from the east. And also, if you go further to the south, so actually parts of southern Florida and especially down in the Caribbean, you see trade winds which go actually from east to west. And that's actually why our hurricanes come in from Africa and move further to the west, whereas all the storms in the continental United States move from west to east. So what happens is these little pattern switches, or these little storms, move to the south where they face little resistance, and then they get picked up by the strong upper air trade winds, and eventually they move to the east. So that's what's probably going to happen, but again, we don't have any guarantees based on this model guidance as of right now. But if we're looking at how things have historically went, I would expect that we would have some sort of colder pattern as we get to about later December. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Goodbye.